Justin here with So Long. Today we're going to go over how to install one of our folding canopy tops, our V2 folding canopy tops. Today we're installing our traditional fin, but you might notice that your kit comes with one of our different style of brackets. We've got a kind of our forward facing, we've got one of our Supra Moomba brackets, another one of the brackets specific to Moomba. We have a variety of different brackets and clamps. So you might find that your specific installation is a little bit different than the one I'm going to really highlight today, but the principles are all the same, and we'll walk you through all those principles. One more thing I want to call out is every boat manufacturer, every tower manufacturer, and even our frames are hand built. And so you might find that on some of our tops or some of the towers, it might need a little massaging or tweaking or bending or drilling to get this top on just right and functionally perfect. We're going to walk you through those things to look for and what you might have to do to get your top on and looking great. So it's the same principle for all of them. You want to make sure that bracket's nice and level. So if your boat has the mounting nubs where we can mount this plate directly to the tower, we're going to skip this next step. But today we're going to go through our traditional V2 with our fin. And so the first step is actually going to be to mount our clamps to the tower. Come with me. So the first step is to get your clamps installed onto your tower. Again, every tower and clamp configuration is a little bit different. We might have some photos of where it gets placed, you know, where those clamps get placed. It also will come with this sheet, and that usually has some sort of direction or photo because again, every boat and tower is a little bit different, and so you'll have to follow those specific guidelines. In this case, we know it goes in this section here, and we're going to put our clamps on there nice and loose. So until you get your brackets mounted, if you've got working with a clamp system, you want to make sure that there's just a little bit of wiggle room in them. You don't want to crank them down just yet till you get your plate aligned, and then we'll come back and tighten everything up. We've got to get that top level, but leave them just a little bit loose, maybe just tight enough that they hang in place, but very delicately. So in this case, we're going to put our fin on. I've got my bottom one in place and my top one's still quite loose. Bottom one's not crazy tight, but I'm going to get this started and leave it fairly loose so I can get my next bolt in here. So in this particular case, I've got my bottom clamp just slightly snug. It's not really cranked down yet. My top clamp is still loose because I've got to adjust it. The real key here is to make sure that your clamps are symmetrical from side to side on the boat. Each pattern will have a little bit different instructions. In this case, we measured up to get that measurement nice and even from side to side. So the next step is to get our bracket mounted to our clamps. Again, if your boat already has the mounting bases, this is where you'll pick back up and start with that. In this case, I've got the bottom one snug. I'm going to tighten this guy in. Again, I'm going to leave it pretty loose until I get it level. So again, I know that on my instructions on this particular one, I'm in hole 8 because it came on my paper, hole 8. Yours might be a little different, or it might be one of the other brackets, so that might be a little, read that. 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is where leaving that other clamp loose so that you can kind of align these two to get that tight. Okay, so this is where, again, we're referencing level to the boat. And also notice that these can actually pivot still and move around the tower. So you really want to make sure that your plates are nice and parallel from one side to the other, but then also at the end of the day, you want to make sure that this plate is nice and level on the boat here as we tighten that down. So at this point, I've got my plates mounted and my clamps. Again, I don't have it crazy cranked down. I can still really move it if I try, but I've got it just snug enough that it will support the weight of the frame temporarily till I get that frame up here and settled. It's really important that you go back and make sure all your bolts are nice and tight, but you don't want to start off tight until you get everything assembled first. So the next step is to get the frame up onto these brackets. This is where it's really helpful to have a buddy. If you don't have a buddy, I'm going to show you a pro tip to help you get it on by yourself. So find some sort of screwdriver or something and just stick in one of these open holes and give yourself kind of a shelf to lay this frame on. Check this out. So the front and back of the frame are virtually identical other than the hardware. So they're actually bent the same length and same bends, but the hardware is what differentiates the front from the back. So the back actually has these two jaw slides on it. The front has a single jaw slide with the strut on it. So that's how you differentiate the two. So get your frame open, get all of your parts hanging down with your hinging this way. And again, if you're by yourself, you can use our little tip there to rest that frame while you come over to this side, and you can drop the jaw slides down onto these brackets. So you're going to take these two jaw slides, separate them. One goes at the front of the bracket and one goes at the back. And again, this is where you need to make sure that these plates are nice and square. Sometimes you've got to twist or adjust, which is why you don't want these brackets clamped down quite tight until you get to this step in the process. Sometimes dropping these jaw slides onto this plate can be one of the challenging steps. Again, some of the towers are not perfectly square, there's different angles, so sometimes you've got to slide them a little further forward or backward to get these plates to drop on in these pins. So sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle, but once you get them on, you're usually in good shape and done. So the next step will be to slide this frame forward or back to get this hinge gap. And on these instructions, it'll give you the hinge gap, which is in this case 16 inches, quite a ways. So we need to make the gap between this first jaw slide and this hinge 16 inches. So in this case, I'm actually struggling to slide this pipe forward. So I'm actually going to remove this rear jaw slide for a moment from the frame. I can flex it, I can leave the other side on, take that guy off. It's binding up, just make sure it slides. I'm going to get to my hinge gap here now. Almost. 16. So I got it at 16 inches. I don't have my back one on, that's okay. We'll tighten that back up here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this set screw, which will keep it from sliding forward and back. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and reposition this rear one and get it just right on the tower. Okay, so I'll repeat the process on the other side, making sure this is 16 inches, gap 15, 16 right there. The next step is to get this strut aligned with the brackets and the tower and the clamps. Some of our brackets, the strut actually goes back to the big mounting plate. In other cases, like in this one, we need to install this fork on the front of the tower leg to receive the strut. So if you have a fork, sometimes they actually go to the inside of the tower and sometimes they go to the outside of the tower. And that really depends on the angle, and you might have to play around with that to get these to line up properly, whether it's inside or out, or look at the photos or instructions to give you a few more details. So in this case, I've decided that the strut lines up the best with this fork on the outside. Again, kind of like the other clamps, I'm not really cranking these down yet. I want to have a little bit of movement without scratching the tower so that I can really get everything aligned first. That being done, like everything else, we're going to repeat the process on the other side of the boat. So that one went in pretty easy, but I want to go over some of the challenges or struggles that you might have with your top. And again, every tower and bimini top is just a little bit different, but the principles are generally the same. So, first off, in this particular case, this one is free floating and we have the set screw up at the top, and we'll adjust that here in a minute. Some come with a rivet actually already in place, depending on the configuration of your boat. Some where the angle of this is really steep, we'll put a rivet in or rivet behind. Some where you get some adjustments. So your boat may be a little bit different. So the first tip is, if you happen to have a rivet, sometimes you might need to leave this down if this is not lining up properly, and you might have to adjust it side to side. So the second thing you might need to look out for, if these are misaligned, sometimes they need a little bit of twisting or a little bit of bending. We already went over, if it happens to be a clamp style, first you want to flip that both ways and make sure that it lines up. And then if that doesn't work, or you've got the other style, maybe you've got our style that has the fork on the end here, or it is an eye end. Again, sometimes you might need to adjust these a little bit. You could usually do that with a crescent wrench. If you happen to have a Big Daddy crescent wrench, gives you a lot more leverage, but just a regular large size crescent wrench will do. So if you need to twist it just a little bit, you can put the crescent wrench on the tip here, and you can give that just a little bit of a twist. There's a little bit of play to get that if it's not lining up because it's not twisted properly. Again, sometimes it's because the tip isn't bent in properly, or the alignment of the tower and the brackets and everything doesn't align properly. So you can put this on the end, and you can actually put just a little bit of a bend on the tip of that eye end. Let me bend it back here. And so those are a little bit malleable. So you might have to twist, or you might have to bend just a little bit depending on your boat, and to get this tip to line up with either this clamp here or with the bracket based on how your boat is configured. So again, one more tip on symmetry, or kind of as we've been doing this, I have left kind of pretty much everything just barely tight. It's tight enough that it's not moving around, but I'm not really binding things up and scratching the car, because I want to make sure I got everything symmetrical and nice before I really crank this thing down. So again, one of the things, if you are working with a clamp style, you kind of want to make sure that the angle here and the angle here kind of match closely. Sometimes you have constraints where it has to go where it has to go, but sometimes you've got a little bit of flexibility. So as I mentioned before, I've left all my clamps and everything just tight enough to hold it in place and not fall down, but I really haven't cranked down on it yet. I just want to make sure I've got everything really symmetrical and aligned before I go through the last step of really tightening every single bolt. If you are working with the clamps like this, what you're really looking for is kind of an equal bend. You can use a square, and this is not a critical step, but you want roughly an equal angle between this bar and the tower, and that gives you the most strength. We have a lot of other tops where this angle is much shallower because it actually goes back to the bracket. So again, everyone is different. If you happen to be doing this style, you want a good 45 or equal bends between here. Not critical, just get it close. Okay, so this looks a little wonky, and I've kind of intentionally done that to exaggerate what we're actually trying to go for. What we want is our bimini top to be nice and flat front to back. Again, I kind of just very lightly bent this out of whack so that you can kind of see that's what we're looking for. Our goal is to get this front basically as flat as the back end. So I'm doing these very loose just to make sure I've got it nice and level. You're also checking for headroom. Really, you want your framework to be reasonably flat, or maybe just a little bit of a high middle. Right on this particular case, our plates didn't end up perfectly level. They're just tilted back, and we want our front tilted down just a little bit to give our bimini top a nice tight fit. One more tip, go to the back of the boat here, and you can usually stand and look and make sure that your frame is level, both the front and the back. Sometimes you can twist those tower brackets to fine tune that back end, but really you can tweak those front ends if they're not riveted in place to make sure that this top is level. So if your top happens to have a rivet here in this jaw slide on the front strut, in order to adjust for level, you might have to fine tune this hinge gap. Now there's a little bit of play in here. This hinge gap is close because that's really more about the canvas fitting, and you've got a little bit of play in there, and you might need to fine tune by loosening these two set screws and actually pushing this whole bracket forward and back, which will change the angle of the front, and you can fine tune that to get it square. So I think we've got our frame installed and nice and square and level and plumb and all those good things. And so this is the point in which I will go back and I will make sure and triple check every single bolt. It's really critical if these have the set screws. You want to make sure these set screws are really nice and tight, especially on these front ones. But really every bolt and nut on this tower, this is the point when you want to really crank everything down and make sure they're super tight and snug. Okay, I can't stress how important it is to make sure that you've got every bolt and screw and nut and every fastener really, really, really tight, and just double check. So I've done that step, and now we can move on to the fun part, which is actually putting the canvas on the boat. So I've got the canvas here. You'll see our So Long logo, this rubber label. This is always at the back of the boat and down. That's on the bottom side of the pocket. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna leave the top open for now, and I'm gonna throw it up over the top. So I've got it up over the top, just kind of over the front of the tower, and I'm putting this pocket around the rear frame, and I'm gonna go ahead and zip this one up, mostly. So now to get the pocket on the front frame, the easiest way to do that is actually to fold both the frame and the canvas in half. So I'm gonna just lay this canvas back here, and then I'm gonna come up and fold my frame. Back on top. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pocket over the frame in the folded position and get my zipper started. So if you notice, your frame has a little Velcro on it as well as the inside of the canvas. And once we get this mostly positioned, we're going to kind of tweak or fine tune that. The function of the Velcro is really to keep this top from shifting side to side when you're opening and collapsing it. And you want to make sure that your corner's around the bend. I've got the frame folded back, the pocket on, and I'm going to go ahead and zip this. I'm going to just do so I've got the frame over the back, and I'm going to go ahead and zip this back pocket in place. So when you fold your top open, especially for the first time, and really every time, you want to look and make sure that the canvas is coming around the bends of the framework before you really stretch it down into place. So I've got the canvas zipped on. I don't even have it zipped all the way. Our first step is to get this open, make sure the canvas goes around the corners, and adjust that Velcro so that it keeps it nice and centered as we open and close it in the future. Especially on the first time you're kind of setting this up, you really want to reach in and make sure that that Velcro on the frame is aligned with the canvas, and just make sure, and what that does is it keeps your canvas from shifting to side, and it will keep your corners on as you open and close it. I've got the Velcro tidied up there. We're going to check it out in the back here. Same thing, we're just going to make sure that that Velcro, there we go, wraps around that frame. You can see I had to actually pull the top up just a little bit to get it on the right side. And now that I've got that Velcro secured, you might have a little buddy to help you lift that, we can go ahead and zip the top up. Okay, so we're gonna pull this bimini top down. I've got that pin in the first side, and sometimes it makes it a lot easier if you can reach up with one hand and hold it with your other. Well, you've got that pin, and you can just simply pop that pin into place. You can do the same thing on the other side, pin it into place. And that's pretty much it. So let's go over a couple more real quick pro tips for good use of your top. We already talked about how important it is to make sure those corners are around the framework as you're opening this bimini top, and that'll prevent your zippers from breaking or other issues. Another good tip, if you are undoing your bimini top, make sure to secure your struts. But the real important part is if you have a lanyard, sometimes they're on the end, sometimes they're on the clamp. Make sure and put that pin back in. That'll prevent it from dangling in the wind as you're driving. So now I'm just going to simply fold this up, and we're going to toss this over. Some boats have taller pylons, so you really have to crank it over. This one's pretty short, so it's pretty easy. Crank it over there. And then the last step to get it to boot up is kind of push the canvas back here, make sure it's folded in half nice and neat. And then you simply want to roll the canvas around the frame, making it kind of as nice and tight as possible. And then you can go ahead and simply zip on the boot. We always like to make sure our So Long logo is nice and upright and readable. That will just simply go on the framework like so. And you're done. I just want to reiterate how every single boat and tower and bimini top are just a little bit different. They're all handmade, and we might have great instructions, we might not have the best instructions. That's what this video is for. But rest assured, we are here to help. You might have an awesome experience where everything just clicks and bolts and snaps right together. You might need a little more help, and we're here for you. So don't hesitate to pick up the phone, call, email, or text if you need any help. Thanks for watching. For more, check out solong.com.